Hi, and welcome to a series of guitar lessons, which is part of my Classic Licks series on the playing of B.B. King. And B.B. King is probably the best known and one of the most respected living blues guitar players, electric guitar players. And in this series of lessons, we're going to take a look at his playing on his earliest recordings from the 1950s and 60s. If you're not a big B.B. King fan, you might not know that his style changed dramatically from what he was playing in the 50s, early 60s, and then into the mid-late 60s. It changed from those two time periods. And we're going to focus on his 50s playing, which was, a lot of it was based on the playing of one of his heroes, T-Bone Walker. Starting out, we're going to focus on the things that he played out of a first blues box position. If you're not familiar with this term, if you're a new guitar player, aren't familiar with it, we're going to use a B flat. It's a good key to play in, a lot of blues stuff in B flat, and it's basically the notes that you can play around the first position bar chord. So there is a B flat chord. My first finger is barring at the 6th fret, and then I make my E shape with my other fingers. If you don't know this chord, then you need to go to my video on basic chords for electric blues playing. And basically he's just going to be playing in and around that chord shape. And so what I'm going to do is show you some of his signature licks, some of his essential licks that he played. And I'm going to do this in a variety of different ways. Let's start out with just some of his real important licks that were the foundations of many of his introductions, solos, and things like that. Lick number one is this one, and this is one you hear in a lot of BB's early recordings. Songs like 3 O'Clock Blues and Sweet Little Angel and a lot of others. Let me play it for you one time in B flat. That's one. So that's the lick. And you'll see in a little bit we'll combine that with some of the other things. So what he's doing, he's got his first finger on the 6th fret, anchoring the first or fretting both the 1st and 2nd strings. And then his 2nd and 3rd fingers are going to bend the 3rd string up at the 7th and 8th frets. So the first part of that is a little bend, and then he's going to drag the pick down on the 2nd and 1st strings like that. So it's 1, 2, 3. 3 notes. And then he's going to take his pinky to the 9th fret of the 2nd string and his first finger to the 6th fret to wrap it up. Now we'll add more to that. That lick alone, you hear him use that a lot of times as a fill or even as the introduction to a song. And later when we do introductions, we'll get into that. Now all these licks I'm going to show you are movable, which means you can move them to other chord positions. So here's an A. I play the same lick in A. Whoops, let me get that again. In G, that's my G, first position bar chord. So combining that, there's another lick that you would hear him do a lot. And in B flat, what I'm doing is I've got my first finger on the 1st string at the 6th fret once again, and my 2nd finger on the 2nd string, just like I did before. But this time I'm taking my pinky all the way up to the 9th fret. And then I'm going back and forth between the 9th fret and the 6th fret on the 1st string. Same thing on the 2nd string. And he would do a lot of riffs just in those 4 note positions. Or this is one he would do a lot. I'm going to get the 9th fret of the 1st string, 6th fret, and then the 6th fret of the 2nd string. And then we combine these, and you get a little sequence like that. So all those notes are within what we call the first position blues box. Now that would be kind of boring if that's all we did. In just a little bit we'll work on the bends and some of that stuff. Now the bass notes, some other riffs. When he gets to the bass notes, a lot of times you'll hear him do something like this. And so in the first position blues box, we can play all these notes. We'll start on the 8th fret of the 3rd string. 6th fret. Same thing on the 4th string. Same thing on the 5th string. And you'll hear BB do a lot of little, he'll do a treble lick riff. And he'll wind up on what basically is the 5 note, which is the 8th fret of the 5th string. So you can play all these notes. And you can also play the 6, 8, and 9 on the 6th string. And now in just a minute I'll show you all kinds of little tricks you can do within that. Bends and slides and all sorts of things. So when you listen to the early B.B. King recordings, so much of what he's doing, he's playing within the context of what we call the first blues box. Now to add to this, let's get started and do some of the fancier stuff that really makes the B.B. King sound what it was or what it is. Bends. And the most basic bend in the first position blues box is when you bend the G string. And what we're doing, I've got I call these short bends. I'm using 3 fingers, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd fingers on the 6th, 7th, and 8th frets of the 3rd string. And then I'm bending together. And you can do all sorts of stuff with that bend. You can just hold it. We'll get into the vibrato, the handshaking thing here in just a little bit. But let's combine some of the licks we already did. And that's a little run that you would hear a lot in the B.B. King thing. So he's doing this. So I'm going from the 6th to the 8th fret on the 4th string, 6th fret of the 3rd string, and then 8th fret on the 4th and 5th. Whoops. Like that. And so you see how I'm using I didn't use the bend in there. There, I threw the bend in. And you can do all kinds of variations with those few notes in there, mixing the bends in. So the bend lots of different ways to use that. Alright, another bend. I call these long bends. And what I'm going to do here is bend up on the 2nd string. And I'm going to start my 1st finger on the 6th fret of the 2nd string. And then I'm going to put my 2nd finger on the 7th fret, 3rd finger on the 8th fret, and my 4th finger, pinky, on the 9th fret. And then just like with the 3-finger bends, with 4 fingers, I'm going to bend all the way up. You can do all kinds of little riffs with it. You'll hear B.B. King use this one quite a bit. Something like that. You can also do the same bend on the 1st string. And all I'm doing is taking all my fingers and moving them over a fret. My 1st finger is still starting on the 6th fret of the 1st string. You'll hear something like that. And then again, bending up. Then I can bring it back down with really I'm getting the 9th fret of the 1st string. Combine it with all the other stuff that I've been doing. Lots of different things you can do with that. So the bends that B.B. King uses a lot in that first position blues box. He'll bend the 3rd string with the 3 fingers. He'll bend the 2nd string with 4 fingers. And he'll bend the 1st string with 4 fingers. Another bend that you'll hear him do is when he does a 3-finger bend on the 1st string. Now he doesn't do this as much in his older recordings as he does a little bit later in the 60s and up to the present. but I'm just doing the same bend I did on the G string and moving over to the first string. You can also do some bends on the second string. So I'm just bending on the second string with those same 3 fingers. And that's another little trick with the bends. Now, to get those notes in that first blues box sounding, sounding good, sounding fluid instead of sounding stiff, there's lots of little tricks you can throw in. One is like a hammer-on pull-off. You may have seen me do that just a few minutes ago. And what I'm doing here is I'm gonna get the 9th fret of the first string, and when I go to the 8th fret, I'm gonna hammer on and pull off, and then wind up on the second string at the 8th fret. And you can do all kinds of licks. You can do the same thing on the second string. You can also do the same trick on other notes. One that you'll hear a lot in BB's early recordings is he'll do this hammer-on pull-off on the 9th fret of the second string. With that, he'll be in that long bend position, and he'll just do or he'll do something like this on the first string. So on the first string, I'm going to hit the 9th fret and then hammer on, pull off. I can start it from the second string. I can start it with a bend on the second string. Throw in that lick. Can also do the hammer-on pull-off thing on the 3rd string, on the 8th fret. I can do a couple of them. That's a very simple idea that you can add to any of your blues box notes and the stuff you play.